So to kick off this Drexel watch party, we've got the head coach, Brian Voelker, joining us now. Brian, thanks for joining us, and we're going to really have some fun looking back at some really exciting games for your program over the last several years. The game we're going to start off with here is a non-conference game against a Philadelphia rival for you in Villanova from back in 2019. That year for you was so up and down. It felt like you had some great games at the beginning, and ultimately it kind of capped off with a nice run in the CAA tournament. What was it about that year where it was kind of a little bit of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think part of it's, always our conference is really difficult, and you never know who's going to show up that day. And but our schedule's pretty tough, so we always try to challenge ourselves. You can see from my hairline that we play a lot of close games, and some of them you come out on the right end, and some you don't. And it just sometimes that stuff happens, and we seem to play a lot of close games. So I don't know if that's people tell me all you guys are always in it. I'm like, I don't know if it's me holding guys back, and we should win by more, or we're doing a good job coaching and keeping things close and figuring it out. So, but yeah, that year was not unusual. And when we play Villanova, it's always a tough game, and Mike does a great job over there with their staff, and they always have good kids and good players, and it's always a pretty good rivalry. And I think our kids treat it as a real rivalry, and they both teams really go at each other.
In that weekend in particular, we had a chance to do both your games as part of that Philly 4 Lacrosse Classic, and you won them both. And it was the first weekend that Ross Blumenthal kind of steps in goal, and as a freshman, kind of took over that starting job. How cool was it to watch a kid come in, get an opportunity, and make the most of it there that weekend? And it was kind of ended up being his job for a while after that.
Yeah, well, I think at the time we were worried because we thought some other guys were going to be our goalies, and we thought Ross would be a guy that would sit a little bit and then, come in and help us. But yeah, we felt like we needed a little bit of spark. We felt like Ross really worked hard. He was always kind of, after practice, getting extra shots and kind of doing everything that it, took. And he played well in practices, and we felt like he's a guy that could come in and give us a chance at this thing. And, obviously hasn't really let go of that since that time. And it's been a really good player for us. He's always super steady. As a coach, what I look for in a goalie is, the goalie that makes the saves they're supposed to make, quote unquote, supposed to make. And Ross really does that. He's really steady. But he also gets in some grooves where he makes a lot that he's probably not supposed to make, and kind of keeps us in there. So he's done that. He's done a great job. We're excited, obviously, to have him back this year to help us anchor the defense. And we're looking for him to, continue that success that he's had since those games.
So one of the other games we're going to take people back to is back in 2017. You guys, late in the season, go up to Hofstra. At the time, the Pride were the last unbeaten team in the country. They're number 2 in the country. I'd forgotten about this game. You guys were, because I remembered you winning, and it was a surprise, but I didn't realize how many you were down in the first half. You on this incredible run. Jimmy Joe Granito makes some unbelievable saves at the end. What do you remember about that Saturday night on Long Island?
Yeah, I mean, again, we've been pretty lucky. We've had some success up on the island. That year we were getting our doors blown off. We felt like Hofstra was really good, but we also felt like, we could compete with them. And obviously they hopped on us pretty good, and we just kind of kept plugging away. I think we scored a bunch of man-up goals. I think Reed had a couple of man-up goals that really kind of sparked us. I think that offensively is really what helped us. And then you're right, Jimmy Joe. And I think people forget about Jimmy Joe a little bit. I mean, he had a lot of saves for us. I don't think he ever got the recognition, because I don't know if our team success was quite, what it should have been when he was here. But Jimmy Joe was a really, really good goalie for us. And that game was one of his best games. But yeah, that game was crazy, because I think we took the lead, and then they came back and had some chances to tie it up, and he made some saves, and I think he made a point blank save right at the end. I think on Ryan Tierney to seal the win. So, but yeah, I remember Reed scoring a bunch of extra man goals, and I remember we kept running kind of the same play. We're like, we'll run it until they stop, and he kept scoring on the crease. And yeah, Jimmy Joe, I think, made a big save at the end to kind of seal the win.
Yeah, and Reed Ballering, I think, was a freshman that year, and we're going to cap this thing off with one of his final games, the CAA championship from 2021. I wonder, what was it like to see him kind of emerge as a freshman, this Canadian lefty, and see what you ended up with at the beginning, and then watch what he helped you guys do throughout his career and ultimately capping it off with the CAA title?
Yeah, again, we knew Reed was going to be a really good player. We were trying to figure out how to use him. I think his first game he played midfield when we played Virginia, and after that game we were just like he's a much better attackman. He's too good to not just kind of have him on the field. And after that game he started pretty much every game that he wasn't hurt or something since he was here. And, obviously had an incredible career and, not just as a player, but as a leader and just a kid. And, what he's doing in the pro league, I think he was second in ground balls.
Yeah.
And like the first 5 or 6 or 8 guys or something are all face-off guys. And he's like second in ground balls, which, nobody that we played against and nobody that like has ever played with Reed like is surprised. Like he's got some magnet in his stick that thing just goes to. I don't know how he does it. But yeah, obviously, just super great kid and was a great player for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. It was probably a smart move, try to put him in the midfield at first, because you watch what he does now in the NLL, and you're like, man, like this guy is a loose ball machine. But he proved to do that as well at the attack spot, where like anything that was around the crease, it was like, all right, Reed's going to get it, and he's probably going to put it in for a goal.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time. We used to joke about it, like in practice when we did any kind of drill or half field or whatever. If there was a ground ball and Reed didn't pick it up, we were like looking around, like, is he not in or what happened or whatever. But one of the reasons we played him at midfield is, he plays a lot of defense in box. And he was the defensive player of the year for a couple of years in the junior A up there. So we were like, maybe it's better to keep him, kind of in between the lines and play some D and all that stuff. And like I said, after that Virginia game, we were like, this is silly. Just put him at attack and he'll score a bunch of goals and be really, really good. So, and it worked out that way. Yeah,
it certainly did. That 2021 championship, it had been I think it was the first since 2014 for the program. What did that year and being able to cap it off with the title mean for that group?
Yeah, again, a little bit of obviously strange year with everything that went on and not having fall practice and getting started really late because of a bunch of COVID stuff. But, felt like we had a really, really good team, really good players, really good guys, really good leadership. Won, I think, our first game of the year and then had a little bit of a lull there. A couple game lull, and then just kind of got on a run and just played really well, and just kept it going. And like I said, I joked about it before. Maybe we just didn't have a chance to screw them up with, not having preseason and some of that stuff. But just a really good group of kids. Got some breaks, made our breaks, and obviously, exciting, playoff stuff and exciting NCAA tournament stuff for us. Still kicking ourselves that we, had some chances in that Notre Dame game to win the game. But, give Notre Dame credit. They pulled the thing out. But yeah, it was obviously a special year, great group of kids. And those are the things we're striving for to get back there. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to, right before that, we're going to show the 2019 upset at UMass. And it felt to me like there was obviously some changes, some offensive pieces that ended up leaving. But the team was very similar from that 2019 team to the team that ultimately won it in 2021. I wonder, do you find that sometimes it's like a build where you got a group of guys and there's just something about them, and then by the time they're juniors or seniors, that becomes like where it was a couple years in the making when you finally win a title?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at teams at our level, it's hard. Not a lot of us are getting like the top ranked, whatever the rankings are, and all that stuff. And it tends to go in waves. Towson had a pretty good wave and went, but they won the conference a lot, but it wasn't like they dominated. Right, there was always somebody right there nipping at their heels. We kind of built towards that thing in 21. I thought last year we probably like underachieved a little bit, like, with some of those pieces back. But you could see it right there with Delaware, with the guys they had kind of bubbling up and playing well, and with the Ward kid stepping in, for Kitchen and playing as well or maybe even better, which I think was a surprise. I think he really probably helped them catapult to what they were last year. But yeah, I mean, you kind of see that at our level, in our league. There's like those little 2 or 3 or 4 year runs. It's usually not 4, because those kids, when they play when they're young, they're getting their teeth kicked in a little bit, or there's some older teams, but there is like a little 2 or 3 year cycle sometimes with those guys.
Well, we're going to take some people through that cycle here over the next several hours and relive some of the good stuff for your program over the last several years. Coach, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much for joining us in this watch party.
You got it. Thanks.